Shalom uvracha from Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. We are studying this evening in our second Haftarah series, the Haftarah of Parshat Balak. This week's Haftarah section of prophetic study is taken from the 5th and 6th chapters of the book of Micah, of the book of Micah. I would like to focus on one particular verse from our Haftarah, those following in the text. I'm reading chapter 5, verse 9, Perek Hey, Pasuk Tet. V'haya vayom hahu nu'um Hashem, and it will be on that day, says God. Hashem is speaking through the prophetic words of Micah, various levels of futuristic blessings. V'haya vayom hahu nu'um Hashem, v'hichrati susecha mikirbecha. I will remove all of your horses from your midst. V'hichrati susecha, v'ha'avati markivotecha. I will remove, I will cut down, I will destroy all of your chariots. The question is, the removal of all of the horses, the removal of all of the chariots, that's a blessing? What does it have to do with the blessed level, contextually, of the words of Micah? It seems that the removal of horses and chariots is not necessarily a blessed level. And our text, the text of study this evening, verse 9, follows immediately the sentence before it, Pasuk Chet, sentence 8, where God speaks of the removal of all the Jewish enemies. What's the connection? If in the previous Pasuk Hashem says, I will remove all of the enemies of the Jewish people, and then we read about the removal of horses, all the chariots. So it would seem that the understanding of horses and chariots in the verses of our Haftarah are similar levels of understanding to the usage of horses and chariots in many, many references in Tanakh, in the Bible. Because in many places in Tanakh, Susim and the Merkavot are mentioned not as vehicles of riding, not as vehicles of transportation, but rather as various levels of active involvement in weapons of war. We all remember, for instance, in the great story of the Exodus from Egypt, as Pharaoh is pursuing the Jewish people, Exodus chapter 14, verse 9, he runs after them, he's about to attack them, Kol Sus, Rechev Pharaoh, all the horses and all of the chariots of Pharaoh. Recall perhaps the description in Psalm 20. Many of us recite that every day as part of the daily service. Of how our enemies pursue us using their rechev and susim. Tehillim, Perek Kaf, Pasuk Het, Eile v'rechev. Some enemies pursue us with chariots, ve'eile v'susim, and some others pursue us with horses. The enemies use horses, use chariots to attack us. It is those kind of horses, those kind of chariots that Micah is speaking of. When the prophet of our Haftarah, when Micah is speaking of the removal of all of the horses and chariots, he is referring to the removal of all of these levels connected to any form of battle, to any form of war. It is those horses referred to in Proverbs 21, verse 31, Sus Muchan liyom milchama. The horses are prepared for attacking, for the day of battle. Micah envisions for us a world where there will no longer be a need for any type of tank or any type of missile. No longer a need for any type of Merkava. Here in Israel, Baruch Hashem, the great minds have developed and perfected the Merkava tank. Merkava 1, Merkava 2, Merkava 3. Is it beyond that?
4.
Merkava 4. However, Bezrat Hashem.
And they're making 5.
What?
They're making 5.
Really? However, these will very quickly, Bezrat Hashem, become completely obsolete. Our Haftarah speaks of the day when there will be no need for any vehicles of warfare. In the words of the Radak on the text of our Haftarah, V'hichrati susecha, says the Radak, Klomar shelo titztarech l'susim l'merkavot, ki shalom yeh lecha la'olam. There will be no need, for there will be eternal peace. Micah chapter 5 of Haftarah conveys a very similar message to the words of the great prophet in his previous chapter. Because in Micah chapter 4, we read the famous words found with only very slight differences in Micah as well as in Isaiah. In Micah chapter 4, verses 4, and then perhaps continuing also into verse 5, we read of the day when there will be no war. Not only will there be no battle, the very idea of military strife will be so far removed from reality that no one will even bother to learn strategies of war. After the standardized prayer for the welfare of the soldiers of the Israeli army, the Tefillah L'Shlom Chayalei Tzahal, in our humble minyan at the Kotel, we try each week, B'li Neder, to add the text, either from Isaiah chapter 2, verse 4, or from Micah chapter 5, verse 9. Seemingly, it's not enough merely to pray for the welfare of the soldiers and for the success of the IDF. Although the tefillah for Tzahal is ever so important, there is a higher level of prayer. The prayer for that great day, prophesied by Micah, there will be no army at all. There will be no need for Tzva Haganah Yisrael. Imagine, just for a moment, imagine the Holy Land without any threat of war. Imagine Admat HaKodesh. Imagine Eretz Yisrael. Imagine Medinat Yisrael without having to spend any money on any kind of concept of military budgets. Could you imagine what this land would look like? Imagine what the people would look like. Imagine we'd be able to remove all warfare or threat of warfare from our nation. Let us all bask in the glorious prophecy of a world without conflict. The future world envisioned by Micah. V'chittitu harvotehem le'itim v'hanithotehem lemazmirot. All military instruments will be turned to agricultural tools. The swords will be beaten into plowshares, and the spears into pruning forks, pruning hooks. Lo yis'u goy el goy herev. No nation will ever again rise up in war against any other nation. V'lo yilmidun od milchama. Not only won't they fight, not only won't there be any war, They won't even study. There'll be no training program, no military training program, no study of battle, because it'll be so far removed from reality. Lo yilmidun od milchama. The Haftarah of Parshat Balak elevates us to the level of V'hichrati susecha mikirbecha v'ha'avati markivotecha. We pray to Hashem that as we study the Haftarah of Parshat Balak, it's not just a prayer and it's not just a study, but Baruch Hashem, we've seen the actualization of so many of the great prophecies. We're looking forward this evening to see the fulfillment of the words of Micah, a world beyond conflict. May we experience that beloved, blessed existence immediately. Thank you so much for listening.